Imagine stepping onto a field, right? And knowing that simply winning the game isn't actually enough.
Oh, it completely changes the entire mindset.
It really does. Like if you don't defeat your opponent by this massive mathematically mandated and frankly kind of humiliating margin, you're just effectively eliminated from the tournament.
Yeah, because at that point, you aren't just playing the team standing in front of you.
Exactly. You are playing against a calculator. And that is the exact mathematical minefield the South African women's cricket team walked into during their T20 international clash against the Netherlands.
Which is fascinating because it fundamentally rewrites the risk profile of every single decision an athlete makes out there.
Because in a standard game, a narrow victory is still a victory, right? A win is a win.
Right. But in this specific group stage scenario, South Africa was chasing a secondary overarching metric called net run rate.
And for those listening who might be unfamiliar, net run rate, or NRR, it isn't just a basic win-loss record.
No, not at all. It's a formula. It calculates the average runs a team scores per over minus the average runs they concede per over across the entire tournament.
So, to keep their tournament hopes alive, South Africa had to drastically pull their negative net run rate into the positive.
Which means they had to score an overwhelming number of runs and then restrict the Netherlands to as few runs as possible.
Which is just a staggering amount of pressure. We are so thrilled you're joining us today because we are looking at the match report from this exact scenario.
Yeah, and even if you have never watched a single inning of cricket, this deep dive is just an absolute masterclass in human performance.
It really is. It's a study of how individuals operate under the extreme artificial pressure of having to manufacture absolute statistical dominance. Okay, let's unpack this, because you can't just walk out onto the pitch and blindly swing for the fences from the very first ball. You have to build a structural foundation.
You do. And understanding the constraints of the game really highlights why that foundation is so fragile to begin with.
Right, because time is a massive factor.
Huge. In a T20 match, an innings only lasts for 120 legal deliveries, which is broken down into 20 sets of 6 pitches, known as overs.
So you have this finite amount of time, and you only have 10 wickets or outs to work with.
Exactly. So if you try to force an unnatural scoring speed immediately, and you lose early wickets, the incoming batters are forced to play defensively to avoid being bowled out entirely.
Which totally defeats the purpose. That defensive play eats up those precious 120 deliveries, and the whole high-scoring game plan instantly collapses.
But, you know, South Africa managed to avoid that collapse, largely thanks to their opening partnership.
Right, Tazmin Brits and Wolvaardt, they built this massive 121-run stand.
Yeah, and to put the final result in context, South Africa eventually posted a total of 208 for 1.
I mean, in a 120-ball game, scoring 200 means you are essentially scoring close to 2 runs every single time the ball leaves the bowler's hand.
It's a relentless, suffocating pace. It made them only the 3rd team to reach the 200-run mark in this entire event.
And it was South Africa's 2nd highest total ever in this format.
Yeah, Tazmin Brits was really the anchor there. She scored an unbeaten 114, earning her first ever T20 international century.
Which is incredible, and Wolvaardt supported her with 45 runs. But looking at the source material, the early phase of this partnership was actually incredibly disjointed.
Oh, totally. They were actively struggling with their timing.
I found that detail particularly striking. Like, they knew they needed this overwhelming victory, but the execution just wasn't there early on. It was like 2 musicians trying to find a shared rhythm.
Yeah, the report notes that Wolvaardt was repeatedly missing short, wide deliveries.
And for the uninitiated, a wide delivery is exactly what it sounds like, pitched far away from the batter.
Right. It's tempting because there's all this open space to hit into.
But if your footwork isn't precise, you just end up swinging at air. And Brits, on the other hand, was punishing those exact same types of pitches.
They were just operating on completely different frequencies.
So how does a team navigate the pressure of a must-win big game when their star players are clearly struggling to find their form early on?
Well, the psychology behind that lack of rhythm is deeply rooted in the context of the tournament. You know, Tazmin Brits came into this match carrying significant mental friction.
Because she had been benched for the first 2 games.
Exactly. And when she finally was brought into the starting lineup in a previous match, she had to play defensively to rebuild a struggling innings alongside her teammate, Marizanne Kapp.
So she was forced to suppress her natural aggressive instinct.
Right. And now, suddenly, she's being told to go out against the Netherlands and manufacture a massive, fast-paced total,
That is severe cognitive whiplash. You are essentially telling an athlete to completely overhaul their risk assessment from one game to the next.
And we saw them working through that friction in real time. I mean, Wolver didn't panic when she kept missing those wide deliveries.
No, she allowed herself to be imperfect.
Yeah, she scored a boundary through mid-wicket, but it actually took until the fifth over of the match for her to finally execute her trademark cover drive. They just kept the scoreboard ticking over with singles while waiting for a mechanical breakthrough.
And that breakthrough arrived in the fifth over, driven by a pretty major tactical misstep from the Dutch.
Yes. The Netherlands bowler, Babette de Leede, was clearly searching for a way to break this opening partnership. So she brought in a leg spinner named Silver Seegers.
Now, a leg spinner relies on wrist spin to turn the ball unpredictably off the pitch. But Seegers made a critical error in her execution,
She bowled too short.
which is bad news for a spinner.
It's terrible news. The physics of a short pitch are highly disadvantageous for a spin bowler. When a ball bounces halfway down the pitch, rather than closer to the batter's feet, it loses its forward velocity.
So it just kind of sits up in the air at around waist height.
Exactly. This gives a professional batter a fraction of a second more to read the trajectory, transfer their weight onto their back foot, and swing with full mechanical leverage.
And Brits and Wolvaardt ruthlessly capitalized on that extra fraction of a second. They hit Seegers for 17 runs in that single over.
That one tactical error completely unlocked South Africa's rhythm. By the time the power play ended, those first 6 overs where fielding restrictions allow for easier boundary hitting, South Africa was finally operating at the required frequency.
What's fascinating here is how fine the margins of history actually are. Because statistical dominance often masks moments of sheer vulnerability.
Oh, absolutely. We're discussing an unbeaten 114 from Brits, a performance that looks mathematically flawless.
But it wasn't.
No, the source highlights a sequence where a Dutch bowler, Caroline de Lange, created 2 distinct opportunities to eliminate Brits when she was on just 46 runs.
Yeah, the Netherlands missed a catch, and they missed a stumping.
Right, and a stumping is when the batter steps out of their designated safe zone, the crease, and the wicketkeeper fails to dislodge the wooden bails in time.
If the Dutch wicketkeeper completes that stumping, the 121-run foundation evaporates. Brits never reaches her century.
It is a stark reminder that even a record-breaking performance often hinges on an opponent's unforced error.
But because the Netherlands blinked, South Africa kept building until Wolvaardt finally edged a ball behind to the wicketkeeper, ending her innings at 45.
So the foundation was secured. But a 121-run opening stand, while excellent, only guarantees a competitive total.
Right. To reach 208 and secure the massive net run rate they desperately needed, South Africa required an accelerator.
They needed a batter to come in against a tiring bowling attack and fundamentally break the game open.
And according to the source, South Africa's number 3 batting position had been a lingering question mark leading into this tournament. They hadn't solidified who was going to take on that highly volatile role.
Yeah, the number 3 in T20 cricket has perhaps the most complex job description.
How so?
Well, they might be called upon in the second over if an opener gets out immediately, requiring them to play defensively. Or, as in this case, they might come to the crease after 15 overs and be expected to instantly hit boundaries without any time to adjust to the speed of the pitch.
So Annerie Dercksen stepped into that role and decisively answered the question, finishing 37 not out.
But her method was completely absorbing. She didn't just walk out and start swinging wildly. She displayed remarkable situational awareness.
Yeah, the report details how she watched Brits, who is now fully dialed in, score 31 runs off 20 balls. During that same window, Dercksen faced 6 deliveries and scored only 7 runs.
She was reading the surface. She was observing how the ball was reacting to the perf, calculating the field placements, and assessing the bowler's remaining stamina.
She absorbed the data before acting on it.
Exactly.
And then, on the 7th ball she faced, she launched Hannah Landier over extra cover for a 6. The switch was flipped.
But shortly after that, the Netherlands created another massive opportunity.
Right. Dercksen was on 14 runs, she hit the ball in the air, and the Dutch fielder dropped the catch. Now wait, so she gets dropped on 14, and instead of retreating and playing it safe, she takes full advantage of the lifeline and swings even harder. That seems entirely counterintuitive to self-preservation.
I mean, for most of us, yes, but that illustrates the mindset of an elite finisher.
Because usually loss aversion kicks in. You consolidate, protect your wicket.
Exactly. But by entirely redefining what preservation means in the context of their specific role, an elite finisher operates differently. Personal survival is secondary to the mathematical mandate of the team.
So because Brits and Wolvaardt spent 15 overs exhausting the Dutch bowlers and securing the structural foundation, Dercksen was essentially playing with house money.
Precisely. The dropped catch isn't perceived as a warning.
What is it perceived as then?
It is perceived as a structural failure by the opposition. It tells the batter that the fielding team is cracking under the pressure of the escalating score. To a finisher, surviving a dropped catch is a mandate to escalate the violence.
Wow. And she did. She manipulated the fielders by using the depth of her crease, stepping deep to turn Yorkers, which are pitches aimed right at the toes, into hittable deliveries.
She finished with a sequence of 23 runs off just 8 deliveries. That's a strike rate of 231, including hitting consecutive boundaries in the final over.
Together, she and Brits plundered 87 runs off the final 39 balls, which is just massive.
Setting a target of 208 completely alters the reality for the team batting second. The Netherlands weren't just trying to win, they were trying to score at a revised required run rate of 12.5 runs per over from the very first ball.
And just to clarify how steep that is, 12.5 runs means a team has to hit at least 2 boundaries every single over while still scoring off the remaining pitches. There is absolutely zero margin for defensive consolidation.
It is a scenario that typically forces a batting team into immediate, panicked mistakes. They have to play shots they wouldn't normally attempt just to keep pace with the math.
But the Netherlands refused to follow that script. They didn't capitulate. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, the Dutch openers, Phoebe Malkenboer and Sonia Karana, walked out and orchestrated a 58-run opening stand.
The source highlights this as their 6th highest opening partnership ever, which is wild under that pressure. Malkenboer, who top-scored with 41, went directly after South Africa's most lethal weapon.
Shabnim Ismail. Ismail was widely recognized as the quickest bowler in the entire tournament. For a relatively unheralded Dutch team to attack her directly is a staggering tactical choice.
It's like a rookie stepping into the ring with a heavyweight champion and just throwing the first punch. Zero fear. In the second over, Malkenboer hit Ismail for 3 boundaries.
And she did it by penetrating the leg side gaps. If we think about the mechanics of facing an 80-mile-per-hour delivery, it's akin to a tennis player stepping inside the baseline to take a 130-mile-per-hour serve on the rise.
Right, so instead of generating her own power, Malkenboer used Ismail's extreme pace against her.
Exactly. Deflecting the ball behind square on the leg side whenever Ismail pitched the ball slightly too short.
Which requires phenomenal hand-eye coordination.
And supreme confidence. Malkenboer recognized that the extreme pace meant she only needed to make slight contact to send the ball to the boundary.
And her partner, Karana, was equally disruptive. She was aggressively capitalizing on uncharacteristic mistakes from the South African fielders.
Yeah, the pressure of defending that net run rate clearly affected South Africa in the field. Karana edged a delivery from Merzan Cap straight to the slit fielder, Chloe Tryon.
The report describes it as a straightforward chance, but Tryon dropped it.
And Karana immediately made them pay. She started forcing the South African bowlers to change their lengths.
She hit Ayabonga Khaka on both sides of the wicket and even managed to lap a Yorker from Ismail for 4. At the end of the 6-over power play, the Netherlands were 50 for 0.
Let's contextualize that for a second. South Africa set out to engineer a mathematical demolition. Instead, after 6 overs, they are looking at a Dutch scorecard of 50 without loss.
The underdog is dictating the tempo. They're utilizing the pace of the fastest bowler and surviving the fielding errors.
It creates an intense strategic dilemma. You are the heavily favored team, your game plan is bleeding runs, and your net run rate objective is slipping away.
So how do you respond to that kind of fearless disruption without descending into total panic?
You rely on strategic refinement rather than wholesale abandonment. Elite teams don't scrap their entire game plan when they face resistance. They diagnose the specific mechanical failure and adjust it.
And we see that exact diagnosis in the 15th over when South Africa brings Shabnim Ismail back into the attack.
Right. Now, Ismail had been hit for multiple boundaries earlier, specifically because she was bowling short.
The natural reaction for a bowler who just got punished for a specific tactic is to abandon it entirely and pitch the ball further up. But she doesn't.
No, she understood that the short pitch wasn't inherently the problem. The line of the short pitch was the problem.
Oh.
Earlier, she was giving the batter too much width, allowing them to extend their arms. When she returned in the 15th over, she bowled the short ball again, but this time she directed it sharply into the body of the batter, stare callous.
It's highly comparable to a baseball pitcher realizing their fastball over the plate is getting crushed, so instead of throwing a curveball, they just move that same fastball 2 inches inside to jam the batter's hands.
Exactly the same principle of physics. By angling the short ball into the body, Ismail cramped Kalis for space.
So Kalis attempted a pull shot, a cross-batted swing meant to send the ball to the leg side.
But because the ball was so close to her torso, she couldn't fully extend her arms to control the trajectory.
So the ball deflected off her glove, popped up in the air, and was easily caught by the wicketkeeper, Sina Lajafta.
Kalis and Molkenboer had built a stubborn 42-run partnership. Removing Kalis was the structural fracture South Africa needed.
Yeah, once that partnership was broken, the mathematical reality of that 12.5 required run rate suddenly crushed the incoming Dutch batters.
Yeah.
The collapse was historic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, T20 cricket is inherently a game of cascading momentum.
Right.
When a new batter comes to the crease facing a massive required run rate, they don't have the luxury of those 6 or 7 deliveries Annerie Dercksen used to read the pitch earlier in the day.
They have to swing aggressively from ball one against bowlers who now have their tails up.
And the numbers validate that cascading failure perfectly. Following Kalis's dismissal in the 15th over, the Netherlands lost 8 wickets for a mere 20 runs, spread across just 21 deliveries.
Wow. And Ayabonga Khaka, who had struggled with her lines during the Dutch power play, returned to execute a ruthless closing spell.
She claimed 3 wickets for 19 runs, which included a sequence of 3 wickets in the final over, 2 of them on consecutive deliveries.
The Dutch innings concluded at 120 for 8. South Africa secured the victory by 88 runs.
They systematically dismantled the Dutch middle and lower order, ensuring that even though they couldn't bowl them out entirely, the run differential remained massive.
So what does this all mean for that overarching mission? Because when the calculators were finally put away, South Africa had successfully dragged their net run rate from negative territory up to a positive .734.
It was exactly the kind of mathematical intervention they required. A shift of that magnitude in a single fixture is a testament to both their explosive batting foundation and their late-game bowling execution.
However, the source is careful to note the broader tournament context. They are still chasing India, who boast an imposing net run rate of positive 2.268.
Yeah, the structural advantage India has built is still looming over them.
But focusing strictly on the execution we saw today, the takeaways extend far beyond the boundary ropes of a cricket pitch for you listening at home.
Absolutely. Look at Laura Wolvaardt's early struggles. It is a brilliant reminder that finding your operational rhythm is often a really messy process.
You don't need instantaneous perfection to eventually contribute to a record-setting foundation.
Furthermore, Annerie Dercksen's innings illustrates the immense value of cognitive reframing. When presented with an unearned second chance, a dropped catch, the optimal response wasn't defensive consolidation.
It was recognizing the opponent's vulnerability and escalating the pressure.
Right.
And Shabnim Ismail, returning in the 15th over, perfectly encapsulates the power of strategic persistence. When you meet resistance, the solution is rarely to discard your primary weapon.
The solution is usually a minor calibration, moving the point of attack 2 inches inside to jam the mechanics of the opposition. This raises an important question regarding the nature of elite performance under these highly specific conditions. We watched South Africa chase an artificial mathematical metric, resulting in a 208-run total, a rapid-fire century, and a devastating bowling collapse in the final overs.
Right.
It begs the question, does the extreme pressure of a net run rate mandate actively engineer a state of heightened execution from a team?
Like, does the sheer necessity of the math force the athletes to access a gear they wouldn't normally utilize in a standard win-or-lose scenario?
Precisely. Or does statistical dominance rely equally on the opponent buckling under the weight of that exact same pressure?
Oh, wow. Because if the Dutch wicketkeeper completes that stumping when Brits is on 46,
or if the fielders hold on to those dropped catches against Dercksen and Khaka,
the entire mathematical landscape shifts.
Can historical perfection truly be planned and executed in a vacuum? Or is it fundamentally dependent on ruthlessly capitalizing the moment the opposition's composure fractures?
That is a phenomenal tension to leave on. We desperately want to believe that strategy and execution can be perfectly engineered in a sterile environment. But the reality of performance is always dictated by the friction of the opponent, the drop chances, and the split-second calibrations. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of a high-pressure victory. Keep exploring the delicate margins between surviving the math and completely dominating it, and we will catch you next time.